going to be men allowed in the women's room anymore? We need to know.
No woman should be harassed in a locker room. That's
answer straight. Are there going to be women? Are you against men in women's locker rooms and sports? That's all you need to answer.
I'm telling you, I
Please.
don't want men harassing you in a women's locker room.
I know.
That should not happen.
It's happening all around America. There are 45 women and there are 45 men in the women's prisons right now. It's happening to our girls. It's happening to our women. And I'm here to let everyone know that this is happening. Open your eyes.
I'm telling you.
Millions of people behind black people who they're using our civil rights to push this shit. If you want to be the governor, you need to do something about it, because I promise you this, I will not be the last to see of Tish Honey, okay?
Well, it turns out that Eric Swalwell might not be as popular amongst Democrat voters as he believes, because ever since he has entered the California governor's race for next year, it turns out polling is showing us the situation remains largely unchanged. And this is something that I was trying to tell people about last month. Not to start the video on a confrontational note, but I do want to address this, right? Last time around, a bunch of people were ridiculing me in the comment section saying, you're completely delusional, a Republican can never win the governorship of California. Did you see what just happened with Prop 50? And I was trying to explain, I'm not saying by any circumstances that in a head-to-head race, a Republican would beat a Democrat. Rather, we're breaking down how this jungle primary nonpartisan election system works and how Republicans, if they take the top two positions, could starve the Democrats out of the general election. This is something we might call the chaos scenario. So that's why I encourage you, okay, before you go commenting, oh, you're delusional, please listen to what we're about to explain, okay, the scenario we're describing, and maybe then you'll have an understanding of what we're actually telling you here today. But nonetheless, it does still appear to be the case, because the last time we reacted to these polls, Eric Swalwell had just hopped in the race. And so, some people were speculating, okay, once Swalwell gets in, the Democrats will coalesce behind him and he'll easily become the nominee. But I tried to make the case, hey, I don't really think he's as popular or even that well known amongst Democrats as maybe we perceive him to be. Right? He poses himself as this rising star of the Democrat Party. He's the next Pete Buttigieg or Beto or something like that. But in reality, I think the Republicans and the Fox News viewers probably are much more familiar with him than the Democrats. I've kind of noticed a pattern for many years now that the actual establishment leaders of the party don't really want to prop this guy up all that much. Maybe even they think he is an embarrassment. And that is what we are still seeing. So in today's video, guys, we'll break down the latest poll from Emerson in the California governor's race, and once again explain for everyone, right, why this could trigger a chaos scenario and what exactly that means for the top two Republican candidates. So let's get into it, guys. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is not only the best way to support our work, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that's it. So here's the first poll we just got, conducted in the month of December. So Eric Swalwell has been in this race for a couple of weeks now, out of Emerson, that is still showing Republicans in charge of the top two. Chad Bianco, the Riverside County Sheriff, currently polling around 13.3%. Steve Hilton, the guy from Fox News, is at 11.5%. Eric Swalwell is close to tied with him at 11.5%, and Katie Porter here is down at 11%. You also see the two, I guess, slightly more moderate Democrats polling a little bit lower, but still, right, dividing the vote among the Democrat caucus. Antonio Villagrosa, the former mayor of LA, is at 5%. Tom Steyer, that weird billionaire guy who thinks that a billionaire is going to be popular amongst the Democrat base. He also tried to run for president back in 2020, if you remember. He's down at 4%. Now, let's once again explain to people why this actually matters, because clearly you can see a very divided Democrat ticket. Basically, every lolcow and loser who has no other thing going on in their political career is trying to hop in on the Democrat side. However, in a normal circumstance, in a normal primary system, of course, this would not matter, right? So whoever wins the Democrat primary, they'll run against the Republican nominee, and it's California, so they're going to win. But as I've been trying to break down to people, that is not how the California primary system works. Rather, it is a jungle primary. It's what they call sort of a nonpartisan election. So that actually means that all of these candidates are on the same ballot regardless of party, and the top two, whoever wins, advance to the runoff election, which is basically the general election, right? So that's why I say, when you look at the divided nature of this vote, you could absolutely see a scenario, as the polls are currently showing, right, where because of the Democrat chaos, because they're infighting so freaking much, that, as you can see, right, the top two currently are Republicans. If Republicans take the top two amounts in vote shares and percentages, you'd actually see a general election in the state of California that is between two Republicans. And at that point, I'm not sure how the write-in system works, to be completely honest with you, but barring something on that front, you'd have a Republican governor, right? Whether that's Chad Bianco or it's Steve Hilton. Right. So that's why this actually matters, and why the system that you could argue the Democrats set up here about 10 or 15 years ago has actually backfired on them. Right. Because I think the logic for a very long time was, oh, well, if we have this kind of like nonpartisan system, you could have general elections. And you sometimes do, by the way, that are between two Democrats and the Republicans are starved out. But now that there's so much chaos and grandstanding, and by the way, there's no clear Democrat frontrunner. Right. The top two is who? Katie Porter, who's a complete insane lunatic, as everyone knows, and Eric Swalwell, who similarly is an insane off-putting lunatic. And then on top of that, right, there's much lower on this list, but basically all these other no-name Democrats have tipped their hat in the race. They're polling at like 5%, 4%, 3%. So much vote division. And on the Republican side, right, only two major candidates running that, well, this is the situation you now have, okay? So at this point, I might actually sit here and encourage my audience to say that if the situation holds, maybe just vote for the Republican in the primary who's in second place, right? Personally, I like Chad Bianco. He's probably the best Republican candidate who's running in the race. But hey, if Steve Hilton shows he has any viable path to second place, I'd say, okay, go vote for Steve Hilton, right? At least to my limited audience and my limited reach, right? That's probably who I would endorse in this situation, because again, a brutal reality check here for Eric Swalwell, not exactly pulling away like perhaps he was expecting. And by the way, there are still open questions on how the current mortgage fraud scandal could, for instance, impact his electability. I mean, don't get me wrong. Again, if it's head-to-head him versus a Republican, I'm sure he'd still easily win in California. But if that kind of muddying of the waters affects a little bit of the margins he might get in the primary that you can clearly tell is so wide open, who knows? That could be a scandal, a problem we see impact his electability. On top of that, there's still currently open questions as to, depending on how this investigation and a potential indictment actually turns out, whether he would even be considered legally qualified or able to run for governor in California, which, you know, who knows how this ends up, but I'm just saying this is something that could have an impact as well.
Eric Swalwell is not legally allowed to run for governor of California. He's going to have to withdraw his nomination or be disqualified, because the rules in California to be able to run for governor are that you have to be a resident of the state, like have your primary residence there for at least 5 years before you run. He is not even currently a resident of California. Now, if we look at his actual documentation, his primary residence is in Washington, D.C. He declared it that way for tax purposes. He wanted to save money by having his primary home in D.C., and the last time he had his primary home in California was 12 years ago. Therefore, he is ineligible to run for governor. There's no gray area here. There's no oh, well, we might be able to find. No, there's none of that. He is a resident of Washington, D.C. because he declared his primary residence to be Washington, D.C. on legal documents, by the way, so he could save money on taxes. See, he didn't want to pay taxes in California because the taxes he's imposed are fucking ridiculous. So he saved money by declaring his primary residence in Washington, D.C. But sorry, Eric, now you're disqualified from running for governor. Couldn't have happened to a better person.
Well, in fairness here, there is still a gray area, and that gray area is whether or not Democrats are actually above the law, right? Will the courts step in, or will they simply let him get away with all of his shady dealings? Because after all, it's different. That's certainly going to be something to keep an eye on. But nonetheless, right, you can see, even if he stays in this race, he's not all of that strong of a Democrat candidate. Still, there is this struggle where, because no single Democrat can pull ahead in the jungle primary system, Republicans, as we currently speak, I repeat, are still leading the race. That's why I say, too, by the way, that if you are a Republican in California who's thinking to themselves, you're completely demoralized, like nothing ever changes here, I'm just going to sit out the primary. No. The opposite is true here, right? Of all of the opportunities we've had over the past several decades since Arnold Schwarzenegger, this is probably the best chance Republicans actually have of flipping that governorship simply by accident, right? Simply because of this system right here. So I encourage you 100%, right? Don't be demoralized by Prop 50. Don't be demoralized by past election results because, again, the system here works differently, right? That's exactly how we could potentially pull off this election, especially if Swalwell continues to be mired down in scandal. Katie Porter's insane. Villagrosa, no one's heard of that guy in like 10 years. Tom Steyer, no one's heard of him to begin with. There's no clear Democrat frontrunner. And this, by the way, is the situation they've created for themselves, right? Because Kamala Harris was set to run. People didn't really want that. Her donors, apparently, so she's not going to do it. Gavin Newsom does not have a clear successor pointed up, right? There's speculation that maybe the lieutenant governor or the AG will step in and run, but still nobody even knows who these people are. So this is what we're dealing with, sincerely. Now, I have heard some people try to bring the counter argument, and maybe this is a fair one, that, hey, if we get to next year and the field is still looking like this, won't the Democrats just all drop out and coalesce behind one candidate? To which I say, yeah, that's possible. And if they're smart, that's what they would do, right? They would understand, hey, this vote splitting thing's going to screw us over. Let's all get behind Swalwell or Porter or Villagrosa, even just someone, right? We just need one candidate to clear second place and then we'll be fine. But that, of course, first of all, assumes the Democrats are smart. And secondly, ignores the fact that, well, we also got to look at the Democrats who are in this race, right? Eric Swalwell and Katie Porter, for instance, I would argue are probably two totally self-centered kind of sociopathic people who sincerely are in this for themselves, right? You see what I'm saying? So if they're total egomaniacs, do you think that, someone's going to be able to approach them and say, hey, you need to drop out. You're screwing over the Democrats. You need to be a team player. After all, right? These clout chasers. Does Eric Swalwell or Katie Porter seem like a team player, or do you think they're going to be these self-serving grandstanders who say, I don't really care. This is about me, and refuse to drop out? That could be a situation we see. Frankly, who knows? And then for all of the lower candidates, perhaps the same could also be true, right? Clearly, everyone on the Democrat side is trying to tip their hat, get in here, get the recognition. So who knows if anyone actually drops out? Again, if they do drop out, then that's it, right? There's nothing we can do. They coalesce behind one candidate. Fine, they're smart. But right now, to the Republican voters, I again say, that has not happened yet. We have to operate with the information we have. And as it currently stands, we have a strong chance of doing this, at least a strong chance for historical norms, right? I'm not telling you even that this is likely to be the outcome, because after all, Democrats will probably figure something out. They'll probably try to get at least one candidate up there. But, again, it's the best chance we're going to have in a long time. So we might as well do it. Even if it's mathematically improbable, it's much easier to do this, to pull it off this way, right, than beating a Democrat head-to-head in that state. So that's why I say, again, very interesting situation to look at. And yes, again, a very brutal reality check here for Eric Swalwell. Yeah, turns out, buddy, doesn't matter how many stupid speeches you make against Trump or try to act like, oh, I said BS, I cussed on TV, so I'm super popular, I'm Pete Buttigieg 2.0. Actually, dude, even your own party probably either doesn't like you or know who you are, right? And Katie Porter, same exact thing. So have fun with it, you absolute self-serving, grandstanding idiots. But that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. I mean, do you see the vision here? Let me know. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.